My dear friends, my brothers and sisters, these last week and a half, I did a lot of reading, and I read a couple of very interesting books. The first book that I read is a kind of a history book, and it's called Killing Patton. It's all about General Patton and World War II. Fascinating book. It's another one of those O'Reilly books, Killing Jesus, Killing Lincoln, Killing Kennedy, and this one is Killing Patton. I recommend it. It's a good read. Second book that I'm almost finished with is a great book. It's Growing Up Sicilian. That's the name of the book. Somebody in Staten Island wrote that book, and I read that with a great deal of interest. I still have to finish it. But the third book that I really enjoyed very much is called The Great Reformer, The Making of a Radical Pope. It's all about Pope Francis and how they call him a radical pope. And it's interesting because they had a lot of stories of how he got elected. You know, the politics, there's no politics in the church, right? The politics of the cardinals and how they got him elected and the different stories. There was one story, though, that was fascinating. Maybe you've heard it. The Pope was riding through the square at St. Peter's, and he saw a very deformed person, very, very ugly. And the Pope had the Pope-mobile stop, and he got out, and he kisses babies. He kisses babies, he lifts up the babies, gives them a kiss, grabs kids. But this was the first time he went down and saw an ugly, deformed person. It was disgusting. And he went and he didn't give him one kiss. He gave him a whole series of kisses on his face. And the man that is deformed said it was a feeling of tremendous love. Isn't that interesting how people with deformity, how people with certain illnesses, look what happened in our city. What happened back here in September and October? Somebody walked into New York that worked in Africa, came here to New York, and he brought with him a case of Ebola. They watched that doctor. He lived here. He went to this restaurant. He went to a bowling alley in Williamsburg. And then he was in Bellevue Hospital. And what happened to the city? What happened to the city those days? Everyone was paralyzed. Who was in contact? Everybody had to be sanitized. You remember that? And that spread to different parts of the country. You see the people that treated, the nurses and the doctors that treated this man, what did they wear? They wore these heavy suits. Why? They didn't want to touch that person because he had such a horrible illness. And everybody was frightened. Did you hear the gospel? Did you hear the story in the gospel? It's the same story. It wasn't Ebola, but it was leprosy. And leprosy in the time of Jesus was one of the worst illnesses that you could have. You had to live ostracized. You had to live on the outside of society. You couldn't be with the people. You couldn't walk into the church or the synagogue. You were staying out. And that illness was a terrible illness. What did Jesus do? What did Jesus do? He was moved to pity. I need to ask this question. When was the last time any of us were moved to pity? Has anybody in this church been moved to pity at a sight of something? Think about that. Jesus was moved to pity. He had a real compassion in him. He had a real sense of love for people that were on the periphery. He reached out, and what did he do? He reached out. What's that song? We sang it the Sunday we had the police officers' memorial mass. You remember that Sunday? That horrible, cold Sunday, church was jammed. And what was the song we sang right after the sign of peace? Reach out and touch. Make this world a better place. And in the reaching out and the touching, the world becomes a better place. And Jesus reached out and touched and healed, made the man whole again. He healed him, and he brought back a certain sense of wholeness to the man. And he went back and announced it to everyone. My brothers and sisters, leprosy is healed, basically. But you hear all stories of people that have sin. Think about that. Are there people that ostracize themselves because of sin? How many people live outside of society because of their sinfulness? Jesus brings healing. How many people are ostracized because of some habit, drug addiction, alcoholism, whatever, and they're ostracized? How many people are pushed away from others because of something that has happened? Divorce, separation, family issues. Isn't it interesting, if you get the tablet on the way out of church today, there's a picture of Pope Francis, and he stops at a shanty town, unannounced. Can you imagine? The Pope says to his drivers on the way to a place, go to that shanty town where the gypsies used to live. And now who's living in the shanty town? Not the gypsies, but the Hispanics, the Latin Americans that have moved to Rome looking for employment. And they live in a shanty town. And the Pope stopped there, told the cars unannounced, and he walked through the shanty town. They didn't even realize. The people didn't realize. And people then started coming to the Pope. That's what we need to do. We need to do acts like that, to reach out to the disenfranchised, to reach out to those that are ostracized, reaching out to those on the periphery, the ends of society, and bring them home. My sisters and brothers, the Pope is a great reformer. He's a great reformer. He's a radical Pope, and he's teaching us every day by the way he lives how we should live. Today, think about this. When did we reach out? When did we touch someone on the periphery of life and society? My brothers and sisters, reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place if you can. The world is a mess. We need to reach out to each other. God bless you. You ready?